rolls around in the grass.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, sure, it's our
When he
scratching.
does at midnight.
You know.
We are live.
Okay, we can call the meeting to order. We have a quorum, so Joel, Janet, Shannon, and Shawn. Jake.
And yourself.
And myself, yes, I am here.
At least you may want to pull your mic up, so.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, okay, there, now am I registering on the, yeah, so, and it's 6:32. Okay. Any public comment? Any public? No, okay, good there. So the first item is election of officers, and I think I mentioned last month that I'm willing to be the chair, you know, at least for the first year. But we should have a vice chair in case I'm not here and somebody needs to run the meeting. So, do we have a volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Okay,
No one else will.
okay. Do we have a motion to approve Shawn as the vice chair? I'll make the motion. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Shawn, thank you. You didn't look away fast enough.
Don't make eye contact.
Yeah.
Don't make eye contact.
Exactly.
You'll also need to make, even though you're volunteering as to be the chair, you'll still need to have that voted in.
Oh, okay.
I'll so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have some penalty language to look at, Rob?
Yes. I kind of just grabbed some language from various communities of different sizes. There's McHenry, Lincolnwood, you know, and the one that was probably the most extensive was Wilmette, but Wilmette is also, you know, the municipal arborist who has a podcast who, you know, he's very in tune with things. Of course, Wilmette is going to be the longest, most intricate one.
Yeah.
So,
It's where I grew up. I went to, when the Emerald Ash Borer first came out, the mayor, Chris Canning, I had gone to grade school with him, and I remember talking to him about what he was doing to get the village to repurpose the dead ash trees to make baseball bats for the Pee Wee League baseball teams.
great idea, but the volume of ash trees that
I know.
all went and the
I
logistics
know.
associated with that.
And I thought, well, that's a lot of baseball bats, but, yeah, anyway. Okay.
Do we have an idea how many ash trees I know the city, but I'm thinking nationally, have been lost due to, that's crazy.
Probably more because
They're
they're also in
regenerating.
the woods too, you know.
Yeah, the natural ones.
natural-
Yeah.
Is it going to be completely irradiate, the ash?
Ash will be different.
Yeah.
You won't have
Large
ash
ones.
trees. You're gonna have ash shrubs.
I see.
They're gonna be 20 feet tall, multiple stems, and they're just gonna keep regenerating from the dead.
Yeah.
As they die back.
I see.
Specifically, because you get small, natural ones that occur in woodlands,
Oh, yeah.
but they get to a certain size and get an emerald ash borer.
Yeah.
So they won't be eliminated, but they won't be
They
big
will never be as large as they were.
unless treated.
Except for my mother-in-law's. Because Davy comes and treats them every year. And they're beautiful. So Rob, so what did you find from your perspective?
It's really an à la carte. You know, there are some in here that are light-handed. There's some here that are heavy-handed. You know, I think, you know, you look at something that's heavy-handed, you know, you look at Park Ridge, where you're fined a minimum of 500 per inch of tree DBH.
Yeah.
So you're.
But not more than 2,500,
Yeah, but not more than 20,
So-
so I mean, but realistically, what does it take to get to 2,500 at that point?
5
Nothing.
inches, yeah,
So,
I know.
really, it really depends on the flavor. You know, obviously, you want to leave a little bit in there for interpretation, for flexibility, if maybe you felt somebody didn't exactly, it wasn't willing and wanton, but, you know, you want to certainly have that hammer in there in case. You know, if you say you do you know, I don't know if you break it out into negligence, but then you have to prove negligence, which then becomes a whole lengthy thing that we have to defend and spend lawyer fees on, or do you just say, you cut down a tree, you know, we're $100 per DBH, and, you know, if it is a desirable tree, then you impose some sort of a replacement tree fee per DBH. You know, so you have the initial fee, because a lot of these, or a few of these I saw had like a, let's see here.
Replacement inches.
Yeah, so replacement inch value, so that way it's like, hey, we're gonna hit you for cutting down the tree, but we're also gonna hit you because now we're gonna use you as a platform to replace trees. And maybe that could be something where, we will, you know, this body, or, the tree board could make a decision where, say you hit the offender with the violation fee, and then you leave it at the discretion of the tree board to impose the replacement tree fee, or vice versa.
I have a question. I was having trouble trying to determine from reading all of these exactly what trees does this apply to? Only trees that were existing? What about a tree that the homeowner put on their own property?
So this is realistically, this is more pertains to trees in city right-of-way.
Okay,
'Cause
'cause
I don't
that
think
was,
we
that
real-
was hard to determine too on some of these.
Some of them, you know, like Wilmette, you have to get you have to get permission to remove a tree on your property, and you have to have just cause and reason, and, you know, you have to have, you know, basically an arborist, and, you know, from what, you know, the municipal arborist said, he said a lot of times, we'll throw it back at the resident and say, you know, I can come out there and take a look, but he's like, but I want you to have an arborist tell me yourself, like, I want to have, you know, you have some skin in this, and say, I had an arborist come out and this is what their opinion was, because he said otherwise we'll be going around tree to tree to tree to tree doing this for everybody, and then, you know, it takes away, you know, the objectiveness of it.
Village of Long Grove charges the resident to have their arborist go out. If it's a protected tree that the cause of removal is debatable and
Sure.
they want confirmation, they will charge the resident $125 to cover the cost of the other arborist to provide that opinion. So,
As far as the early stages of this board, are we concerning ourselves with just the easement? We're not going to get into people's personal property, right?
Right, just the public, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of just set up a, you know,
right.
where we're looking to make a
Yeah, it
difference.
seems like we're never quite ready to become the tree police.
Right.
Like you said, right away, city property,
Yeah,
parks,
you know,
whatever.
something along those lines, or, you know, if we have easement where maybe it's a drainage easement, or, you know, a city easement somewhere, a ditch line, things like that, where, you know, maybe, you know, drainage easements, the power to remove, but, you know, if you plant a tree in the drainage easement, we have to take it down, do we then fine you for planting a tree in the poor location?
Trying to establish, right?
that's,
Yeah.
That's a difficult, because you don't want to discourage residents from
Correct.
planting trees.
In your penalty section, do we have something we can create where you'd be more proactive? Certain municipalities will say, an example like an oak tree, new construction, will put out snow fence and tell you where those
Yep.
things are gonna reach out and where.
Tree
the tree
protection
can't go.
zones.
Is that something the city of Harvard actually has on file? Do we?
We can, I mean, so this would all be established by the tree ordinance, but as far as enforcement goes,
Well, let's say a developer does that and you don't see the damage for, say, 5 years.
Right.
Can we hold that person responsible for that tree? That developer, that builder, whoever?
there's
runs the
really,
tree?
if we don't catch them in the act, we really can't prove it.
So that's what I'm saying, can we establish some proactive measures that say, hey, look, you can build, bring your stuff in here, not there?
I mean, generally speaking, you want to protect the drip line at a minimum, because if we get much past the drip line in some of these trees, they're not going to be able to access some of the property, or they have to do mulch beds and wait, and,
Like plywood or
Yeah.
alternatives.
Well, how far do you want to go with protecting the trees, is what I'm saying.
Right.
If you don't take that consideration at some point, someone's going to ask you why the board didn't.
Taking a half step backwards, where do you think, what's the greatest risk to our trees right now? What citizen, is it cars running into them? Is it?
No, it's not, the greatest risk to the trees right now as it sits is probably age and disease. I can't really pick out of anything beyond that, because the calls that I will get will be, there's a large crack in my tree, it looks like it's ready to come down, or, there's a family of wood ducks living in there, and this is just getting worse and worse and worse, or it'll be, storm wind damage in the middle of the night.
So it's not homeowners sort of
Vandalizing them.
illegally
No.
removing parkway trees, illegally damaging?
No, and realistically speaking, because could that be happening? Sure. But there's really no enforcement arm of Public Works at the moment to go around and be catching this. I'll have somebody reach out, and, I had a resident reach out last year and say, this tree in my right-of-way is dying. Do you, as the city, would you be willing to take this down? And I just kind of looked at it and I said, listen, I'm like, it's a maple tree in relatively good health. You have some, dying limbs, and they were concerned with exposure and, potential safety risks. And, I'm like, I can't tell you when we're going to get back to it. I can tell you that, we can probably get to it within a month. And they said, well, if I have a contractor come out here to remove the tree, would you allow it? And I said, if you are going to take that onus, I'm not going to stand in your way. So,
I don't, at this stage for us, I don't think we need we don't have a problem specifically of
right.
homeowners removing their parkway trees, so keep it relatively simple.
I'd say quite the contrary, when a tree is removed, they want a replacement.
They wanna do
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
So, frankly, I can't think of any time where someone has removed a tree from the city property, at least that we know about. But where I do see an issue is there's been an accident and someone hit a tree and now the tree needs to be taken down because the tree's been damaged and won't survive.
so strong language there for insurance, for that type of
Yes.
insurance purpose.
Yes.
Because their insurance
We
would
have a
pay
nice,
for that,
solid
right?
Right.
guideline, then, like you're saying, then they're gonna, whatever our guideline is for that lost value, then their insurance company would be on the line for that.
Indeed.
I think one of the definitions or something that I think would benefit the most would be language on where, how, and what types of trees get replaced. Because that's going to be what we struggle with the most is replacement trees. And then, spacing from ComEd lines and overhead communication, underground water, sewer. Do we want to make rules where if you have a water main in your easement, we're not going to put a tree there because it could grow for 15 years and we're going to come by if we have a water main project or a main break and we're going to have to remove the entire tree. Do we limit how close trees can be to the sidewalk because the sidewalks can heave and then that becomes trip hazards and, It's a
Yeah, except with
very,
the sidewalks, we can take care of that by putting in a
Mhm.
barrier between the, next to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So that then when the young tree starts growing, the roots aren't gonna
right.
do that, so we can,
What's the cycle on a
Manage that.
sidewalk or a water main?
There's some water main in the city that could be 30 years old and has main breaks because it's either in an area that sees a lot of shock load, or, I think some of the water main running beneath, Air Street is over 100 years old. It really depends on the area, and I think, a few years ago, we had the winter from below, where the water flow was reversed in the city, and I think we had like 40-some main breaks that one winter.
that was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was because we had there's only a couple places where the water crosses the tracks. And one of those connections, which is right off of Air Street, had
Main break.
a main break. And so that eliminated that connection. So it forced water to utilize more the other connections at a heavier load, and caused a redistribution of the water flow in different directions. So a lot of those mains weren't used to the water flowing in those directions, and we
Yeah.
had a huge spike rate in breaks until we could get that fixed. And that was a very expensive project, because we had to go underneath of the railroad tracks, and we ended up utilizing
Cured in place.
a cure in place to fix the problem, instead of having to dig it all up. And that was expensive, but it was a very good fix. And once all that was put back together, I think our main breaks went pretty much away.
Yeah.
That we were having literally, I think there were some weeks we had three breaks in a single week. It was really rough on our public works
Yeah.
department, so.
The reason I bring it up is because I think that a tree's cycle on a parkway is not that dissimilar than a sidewalk cycle, or,
100 years.
yeah, so that it doesn't.
Sure.
It's not, if we know we have to do water mains in one area, but even then, let's say you're gonna do a water main in 10 years, well, I guess you wouldn't be able to do the main if you had to take out, if you had a
Right.
newly planted tree in that parkway. So if you know you have a main project coming up, don't plant for 10 years in that area, but
Right.
in general, it's not gonna matter, because the trees and the infrastructure are gonna be on a similar cycle.
Sure.
I have another hypothetical situation. What about trees on private property that are dead or dying and clearly pose a hazard?
We have language in our code enforcement ordinance, I believe, that addresses, it's like nuisance vegetation, or, I think we have an enforceable arm when it comes to something like that. I'd have to double check, but generally speaking, that's something that's usually pretty boilerplate in most code.
And so would the action be for a neighbor or something to report this if the people themselves aren't willing to do something, or how does?
In previous communities,
I've
I've
had
had
a
that
question
situation
asked to me
where
about this.
someone has a dead or dying tree, and, they approach Public Works about it. And, in those instances, there was a staffed arborist, so there was no cost to us to have somebody come out there and do an assessment. Whereas if that happens in the city of Harvard, we don't have anybody on staff that would be able to make a judgment like that, other than years of experience and, knowledge of trees. They wouldn't have any formal training.
We can't,
Tree board has a track
Yes.
qualified arborist.
yeah.
How much time you want to spend here during the day?
Well, even just to stay out of neighbor disputes, I
Right.
think it should just be where this is how I've heard it worded before, and it's in this negligence
Mhm.
code enforcement type thing, is it's dead.
Right.
You don't have to be an arborist to know
Yeah.
that there's a problem. Like, if one person doesn't like someone else's tree,
Right.
and they're
Yeah.
saying, no, it's dying, or it's,
Right.
Yeah.
it's infested or whatever,
It's messy.
it's whatever, don't, you know, those types of things stay clear of. But yeah, if one person notices that someone else's tree is 100% dead and hangs over their house, unfortunately, what recourse do we have though?
We can require
let me
them
pull up
to
our,
take it down.
I believe,
Yeah.
let me pull up our code when it comes to nuisance vegetation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when we adopted the tree regs.
Was it in that,
For when we adopted the stuff for the tree board.
the tree board?
Yeah, that was in there. Yeah, that's the only instance, I think, where if it's on private,
Takes care of it and then gives the landowner a bill.
private property,
Reading it right.
yeah, that,
Usually step one is to notify them and give them
Yeah.
some time frame.
yeah.
And then step two is
But it's
the
that we
city's
can go
contractor
in,
is sent
yeah.
in, and then you put a lien on the property.
Right.
For that cost.
I think it's under 1104.
Section 8 is any tree or limb thereof on private property determined by the director a lethal communicable disease to be dead or dying, city may require its treatment or removal. So it's in the ordinance.
Yeah.
So that should cover us for that.
B covers like.
Private property owners have the duty at their own expense to remove or treat nuisance trees on their property. The city may remove such trees at the owner's expense.
That's section 8.
Yeah.
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 Did you find it, Rob?
I don't, let's see here.
It's not under the nuisances.
No, and we don't, do we have the tree board, on the website?
Yeah, it should be.
What chapter would that be?
It's 12.
I don't,
Unless it was added to nuisances, but I don't think that's.
I thought it was its own thing.
Well, let's go through this again. I don't see it. I think it's it's gonna be one of these.
Yeah,
No linked yet.
just reserved yet.
Well, there's an issue, Administrator.
I think, Mayor, if you go to the packet from the last meeting, we should be
Okay,
able to.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's in that.
It says section, chapter 5, so would it be, is it buried in chapter 5 on the website?
Oh, it says, yeah, let's go look. Chapter 5. So let's go look.
Boards and
Oh,
commissions.
boards and commissions.
Okay.
Here we go, tree board. And you said it's in section 8?
Yeah.
6, 7.
Probably think about having it in a different section of the code.
Yeah, it seems like the board, the establishment of the board
Right.
should be here, but
All
this
the
kind of like, yeah,
regulation
all
stuff,
that should
yeah.
go either under nuisances or somewhere else.
Somewhere else, yeah.
It doesn't make sense that it's listed
You could do it, since it doesn't always address nuisances, since we're just concerned with the public right of way, maybe public ways and property.
Oh, yeah, that makes
That
sense.
could be. But at the same time, the issue that Janet brought up is on private property where
Right.
it's a neighbor, his tree is threatening your property, right?
Yeah, so that provision we should probably put in the nuisance section.
I would agree.
Yeah,
Or refer to it,
Yeah,
like,
right.
refer to, nuisance trees, refer to section
Yeah.
5.06.8 or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're making those notes?
This
Thank you.
particular situation is kind of interesting. The homeowner has called ComEd,
Mhm.
and had them come out and look at it, because clearly, if these big limbs come down, it's going to take down all the wires for that.
Right.
And ComEd said it's not close enough to their wires right now that they would do anything about it. Although if
Yes.
it falls,
The only, ComEd will come out if it's close or if there's imminent danger. But they are way more responsive than any of the cable or communications companies. Because the cable and communications companies will tell you just, rip it down, we'll come fix it whenever.
Yeah, because they're not going to pay to take the tree down.
No, and like
It's
even,
cheaper for them to replace
they
it.
would rather, if there's a low hanging wire, they'd almost rather, well, if you catch it with a truck and tear it down, we'll come get it. But other than that, it's been low for a while.
So, so what do we, what do we want to do in terms of, for penalty of removing a tree on public property?
Keep it at, I don't think it's a major issue,
Yeah, it doesn't sound like.
The biggest one right now is some sort of accident or, so something to cover the removal cost. So whatever our actual, let's say a car hits a big old tree, 20-inch maple. It's emergency, we have to get it removed, the actual value or cost of that. And then our actual replacement cost.
For reference, the emergency removal of the oak that tipped over on Second Street was $3,500.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to take out a home equity loan when my two big oaks died, and we had to remove them. Yeah, he did. He's like, oh, look, they're free money.
Well, I think that's an appropriate type of,
For our situation, we don't need to be punitive at this point, we don't have a running problem.
The recommendation I would possibly make is to establish a minimum and maximum, so at least you have the ability to carry that out should the need arise. Maybe we don't have to get as detailed with DBH, but at least establishing a fine for those instances should they come up. Because I think we were a little light-handed, possibly, I think was the original concern that brought that up.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, it was not to exceed $500.
500, right, which is nothing when
Not great.
you're dealing
I-
with
Yeah,
a big tree.
in my opinion,
yeah.
it should be no less than 500 and no more than
2,500.
25, 3,000, I don't know.
3,000's about a standard tree removal most days.
Sure.
No, But if there's some sort of, let's say a tractor trailer goes and plows down 7 trees in a row.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I mean, you could spell that out then as per tree.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if we're not being punitive, we can do a fine on top in cases of purpose or intent.
Mhm.
You know, that in cases of accident, we literally just charge whatever our actual cost is.
So would you say, so violations and penalty would be for somebody removing a tree. Would you then have a section for accidents and to be made whole? Because that really wouldn't fall under a violation or penalty.
Yeah, so under violation penalty, the actual real cost plus a penalty.
Okay.
There, I think you could say it's actual cost and your penalty may be 500.
Plus
'Cause
500.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
penalty's a separate
Right,
from the replacement cost.
right.
You cost us this tree, you removed whatever. Now, and we don't have to get in, we could, but we don't have to get into the inch for inch thing.
No,
Right.
You know,
I mean, you can make it as broad as you like.
Yeah.
But I think in those instances, if we had some rogue person who went around with a chainsaw, started cutting down city trees because they're pissed off at the city,
Yeah.
there needs to be some language that the city has to enforce and fine.
Replacement cost plus $500 per occurrence.
I would think that that'd be appropriate and, excuse me, especially with the staffing level of Public Works, then that just means outsource. You're gonna pay whatever it costs. We don't have to worry about, assigning a time and value to
We
it.
can provide them the invoice.
Perfect.
Have we ever collected on things like that before, and if so, what do we do with that money?
I believe it would go into a general fund revenue line item, miscellaneous.
Is there any way it can be earmarked to go back towards like canopy replacement?
I think that would have to be done through the budget process.
But we've done that in other situations, right? I mean,
Council just needs to say,
Yeah.
send it to there.
Yeah.
That's an
yeah,
easy
it's pretty
thing.
easy, so.
I mean, because that's what we're seeking is replace the cost we spent to do that. So-
Mhm.
And likely that would come out of your budget for trees.
So,
So then would it make sense then to finally go into a lockbox to only be used to replace the tree instead of the general fund?
Well, his budget comes out of the general fund. That's
It-
how
the
his
way-
budget works.
The way I think Deb does it now is she keeps notes of where the money came from. So she can, pull up a spreadsheet and say, we've received X amount of money from tree violations.
so then the council could then say, well, okay, then maybe let's increase the tree budget.
Sure.
We could do that. Instead of saying, oh, look, now we could just keep it the same and we got this extra revenue. So, but that's up to the council. Are there any other penalty situations?
I think another comment, there could be another scenario. McHenry's specifically, and I know other communities, Crystal Lake is the same story. It's paying attention to larger properties, maybe a large commercial development or a subdivision or whatever. And and there actually it is on private property potentially. And do we want to have anything like that? Or when we've had subdivisions go up, there probably isn't usually existing trees, but there's probably requirements for how many trees are going to go in or something.
Yes, each property is required to have, I think, 1 or 2 trees.
I think it's two trees in the right of way.
Yeah.
I think it's in our UDO, correct?
It is, yes. What I could see a scenario is that someone decided that they wanted to plant a tree in the right of way and not essentially get permission or plant a species that should not be in the right of way.
Right.
So there should be some kind of language that addresses that issue, because that very well can and has happened in the past. So.
Do we have any parcels that have a large woods that are slated to be developed?
I believe most of our open land for development's farmland or cropland. I think it's we might have a pocket or two, but nothing like what happened in Woodstock recently.
There's the property that is zoned for residential, and it's annexed up on Crawley, where we abandoned the road. It's further down
Yeah,
from,
but I don't think
that's-
there's a bunch of wood in there.
oh, yes, there
Is
is.
there?
Yeah, it's part of
Heavily-
one of the largest remaining oak woods in the county.
It's heavily
Yeah.
wooded there.
Yeah,
It's gorgeous.
it is, yeah.
That would be
Which
the
is,
kind of,
yeah, what he was talking about,
Yeah.
like putting into place tree protection requirements for development.
Yeah, during the
So,
development process, yeah.
if you don't have them in place at the front end, the developer come in there and strip every
Yeah.
single tree out of there because it's easier for them.
Yeah.
Then the community loses that value and asset.
Well, then what I'd recommend is you guys or staff show you or designate certain areas within the city that are designated conservation zones that require,
Special
a
consideration.
special consideration for development that would include a tree plan.
Actually, this McHenry one is pretty tight for that one. Change the scope and they have this general scope and
Mm.
3 or more lots, 2 acres or larger, all areas seeking annexation. And then it has a legitimate, they would have to get permits for anything they remove on the private.
Yeah. Tree removal permit, $75.
So how do you, if this kind of development's gonna happen, then you build in the cost for the city to manage that in the permit fee.
That's also a really good place to insert a trees required for what's removed, and then they could either put them back in their development or in parks or other community spaces too.
Has to be resolved today, but just doesn't sound like there's some development that's happening.
Yeah, any place that's currently being considered for development doesn't have this issue, but I think it would be prudent to create some kind of language for those areas that might eventually be developed. I mean, the city, within the corporate limits has quite a bit of property that goes even further down Lawrence Road that I'm sure there's some areas of wood there. So, there's no consideration at the moment for any development, but who knows in 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
So we certainly should consider some kind of language to put in some protections.
Right.
Just, it's not an urgent issue.
Yeah, it's not something to resolve tomorrow.
So it sounds like we also need, just circling back to the people planting in the right-of-way, that they need to come in and get it
We would-
approved
We
for
would
the
have to,
species and the location.
correct. So, I mean, ideally, I would like to, I'd like the board to establish like a acceptable tree list, just for the sake of speed of things. So it's like, this is the list, here you go, plant whatever's on here, let me know what you got. That way we can streamline it.
There is in our current ordinance in chapter 6.11, talks about permits and planting locations in the right-of-way and such, and it does list these tree species as acceptable trees, and exceptions to the listed trees will be considered by the city. So they could submit, hey, I want to plant XYZ tree that's not on your approved list, Can I get that approved? So I think that would have to go through a permit process, and eventually it really should come now, because we have a tree board, it should come to the tree
We
board to
might want to
review.
update that
In fact, there's
list.
too many maples on it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't disagree. I think
And-
this is
and
something
We
you,
don't ever need to plant a Norway maple.
I think, this is a list that this board should
Or a honey
look
oak.
at and maybe revise, or recommend revision to city council.
Could we, because this will interfere with the same section of the tree board ordinance, could we just say for approved trees refer to,
Good,
So
yeah.
what section is this?
Chapter 6.1, or 6.11, under public properties.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
and I've given this list to people with a very wide berth of, here's our standards, let me know what you want to put in. Because I've had
Just so
somebody,
you know, I planted a chinkapin oak in my right-of-way to replace a calorie pear.
do you
That's
have,
not on the approved list.
do you have an example? Yeah. Do you have an example, of, where's your permit, ma'am?
Yeah, I know.
And one thing, the way this is listed right now, and I think what you're speaking to, because also there, we have some wires on our roadways where you wouldn't want
Right.
Those
some of these
trees.
trees underneath the wires.
Right.
So there almost has to be this, like you say, an already pre-existing guide of, okay, underneath
Right.
wires, these are acceptable trees
So it's my understanding, this was much like many of our codes were boilerplate kind of, and they were brought in from other municipalities, and it's not really been defined specifically for our community, although this particular list was updated last in 2013. So, but again, we've not had a tree board until now, where we have a group focused on, do these trees make the most sense? And I have no idea how they came about to, create
That was
this
the Lamz.
list.
That was the nursery.
It could very well have been.
Those are, because even like a Crimson King maple is a Norway maple.
Yeah.
It was just a nursery. There's nothing wrong with it. It's
No,
just what a nursery
right.
had.
But there may be, certainly more diversification would be considered.
Well, and it might be why, like, so many of our right-of-way trees are maples.
Oh, mine are.
And, yeah, I know, they're either maples or honey locusts.
So,
Oh, you do, okay.
I have honey locusts, so, yeah.
I've got one great big maple on mine, and I'm happy with that one big maple.
I would say the honey locusts are fairly easy for raking of leaves, because they're tiny little leaves, but there is a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they filter their way down into the soil, and,
My gutter.
Gutters,
The
yes.
dashboard of your car. so
Yes,
it's
yes,
in the
yeah.
grill there.
they get everywhere, so.
The nice, people like them because you can still grow turf under them. Over time, you don't have the turf loss that you do with the maples because of the canopies being so dense.
Sure.
So, homeowners like locusts.
So I think, with this current ordinance and, under chapter 5, what really needs to happen is combine the two to create, a more, one robust and more kind of in keeping with what we think really are more, what's the word I'm looking for? More diversification and more eye on conservation, right? So,
He's already doing that because we have London plane trees in our neighborhood.
What's that?
We have London plane in our neighborhood
Okay.
that have been planted.
And like I've had somebody reach out about Ohio Buckeye and a few other trees where in that location, sure,
We have even a bur oak. Our one neighbor has a bur oak.
There's also the State Street. Miami maples.
Miamis, yeah.
I meant to bring one. There's a guide called Selecting and Planting Trees from the Arboretum.
Mhm.
And they have like this whole checklist thing of different soil types underneath wires.
right.
And it sort of helps clarify some of those things of where you wouldn't want to have a tree, the nuisances that certain trees provide.
Right.
The only challenge there is now that that's a really long list, who's actually approving? Now somebody has to approve,
Right.
now you're spending time.
I mean, if essentially, if all I really would like would be some sort of clear direction from this board so that it takes that discretion off my plate, because otherwise it's just another decision that has to be made in a day filled with decisions. So if I can say, you want what tree? Check, 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 okay.
So I think having a prohibited trees list helps. And, yeah,
It's probably more important.
yeah,
I had-
exactly.
I had somebody the other day ask me why Ayer Street wasn't filled with Bradford pears.
Yeah, and I saw those on the tree list, the permitted street tree list for McHenry. Calorie pear, no, no.
Where do we want to go next then?
So
For our
if,
next meeting?
yeah,
How are
so,
we going to prepare this? How is this going?
well, so are we done with penalty discussion?
penalty- I
Come
think-
up with the actual penalty?
Penalty was replacement plus a fine of $500.
500,
Yep.
okay.
Do we want to say a fine of $500 at the discretion of the tree board?
Per occurrence.
Per occurrence.
Per
Per tree.
occurrence.
Occurrence.
Yeah.
Per tree board review.
Yeah. Yeah, and should we put in the not to exceed something?
Probably, because if somebody takes down an oak and we say, what's the replacement value of a 25-inch DBH oak?
Right,
You could be talking about a lot of money.
yeah, we want
Or,
$10,000
yeah.
at least, yeah.
We've given ourselves a little bit of flexibility because when we've said replacement cost, we didn't say what we were replacing.
Right.
And that maybe is upon tree board review. Because if it's just like a simple situation where it was like a moderate-sized tree, then we're just putting one tree. But if it is that 30-inch oak, do we go after them for 30 inches of replacement tree?
I think that's driven by circumstance.
So that if it's at tree board review, that gives us that flexibility to.
Yeah.
To increase the penalty, the replacement cost increases because we're increasing the replacement.
So the language would be the replacement cost plus $500 per occurrence at tree board review,
Or subject.
subject to
Subject
tree.
to.
Board review. Then if you have the other situation where someone just made an honest mistake.
Yeah.
Or, there's some circumstance and it just doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to penalize that person. They replace the tree but don't charge them $500.
Right.
Gives you latitude.
Yes. Okay, anything else on penalties?
How would you like to word it, considering if someone plants a tree that's prohibited? Or without a permit?
Well, if they plant a prohibited tree, we could just make them remove it.
Removal cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, removal cost. Yeah.
Would that be covered under the tree selection? Or would that be covered under penalty language?
Penalty language.
Yeah.
In my,
So so it would be planting of nuisance trees or trees without permit?
I'm right away, correct?
Yeah.
In public property, right?
So planting of nuisance trees or trees without permit on public property, subject to a fine of or subject to removal,
Removal cost,
removal period?
yeah.
What if they plant a tree that's an approved tree, but they didn't get a permit? You don't want to remove the tree.
Double the
in that
cost of
case-
double the cost of the permit.
Permit, there you go.
And what is the permit cost?
Nothing. At least according to our
Yeah, there's
language
no-
right now.
There's currently no cost.
Well, we need to attach that cost to it, because there is a
Yeah.
hidden cost to
Yeah.
process a permit,
Yeah.
so there needs to be some cost associated with it.
Yeah, but I think
Is it hard
to,
bring that into the infrastructure, the fee? Or is that easy,
And in terms of,
collecting a permit fee?
oh, no, that's easy. I mean, we collect fees for all kinds of things, so, no, that's an easy process, just you need to dictate what the fee costs.
I guess, and then for me, for clarification, where would this permit be generated from?
That's a good question. I think,
Do we make it a function of the city hall front office, and they collect the money, they let me know who's paid for it, and then from there, we complete and return?
Mr. Hattie, would you,
That's how I would do it.
yeah, that makes the most sense. Come City Hall,
Sure.
and then
So we establish a form?
once a permit's processed, then Public Works is notified.
cool
Sure.
to be able to do that online.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know,
We'll get there.
we're moving that direction for online permitting, so I see that as a viable option in the future, yes.
Right now, the way permits are done is exactly like that. They submit the permit, pay the fee, and then the permit goes on to whoever needs to approve it at that point, and then notification once it's been approved or denied. But it's all run through the front office or, in some cases, online.
And I'd suggest that we'd want to keep, if somebody's planting a tree on public property, that we would want to keep the fee low, because we
yeah.
want to encourage people to do
I
that.
think your fee,
$25
cost
bucks?
is $25 would be sufficient.
Yeah.
And that's not cost prohibitive. And that should cover the clerk's fee, time for processing such a permit, so.
If we're going the other way around, then it is 50.
Right,
Yeah, they
so
didn't-
without
they
a
didn't
permit,
get the
it'd be 50.
permit.
It's by not
Yeah.
getting the permit.
And then, yeah,
That's interesting.
Because you want to encourage them to plant it, but hey, you need to notify us, because maybe they planted in a place it shouldn't be planted,
Right.
like, yeah, it's approved tree, but this one is underneath power lines, you should, or maybe it's too close to water main,
Yeah.
it can and likely create, additional issues, so double the fee seems appropriate.
Well, when they get their permit, would they get our list of either permitted or nuisance trees as?
Yes, what I envision is us having a pamphlet available to go, here is, you want to plant a tree, here is, the approved trees and the nuisance trees that are prohibited, and here's the application process. Excuse me?
That's the most,
Nuisance trees versus,
So, just as an example, in using this, it would be like, all right, here's your permit, and then attached to it would be the list of accepted trees.
Right.
And then are you requesting that permit be returned with what they select and where they intend to plant it? So
Yeah.
that you can,
I would say that would be when you present the fee, like Mayor said, we have the pamphlets available, like, hey, I'm considering planting a tree. Here's everything that'll explain how to do it. When you select a tree, come back with the amount. I don't know if we get to the weeds as far as who's planting it. Do you have a tree bag on it?
Question on that?
Call Julie.
Well, yeah, because
Before
whoever
you dig a
digs,
hole.
whoever digs that,
Yeah,
they
that
have the
should-
responsibility for it.
Could include that all in the permit.
Yeah.
All the checklist. Now,
And-
does the city inspect the hole? On the planting of the tree?
I wouldn't see a need for
No.
it.
Goes too shallow, goes too deep? Person does it themselves, company does it? It's gonna be in the city's easement, right? So if it's done incorrectly,
Well, when I
how do
think,
you rectify it?
as part of the permit fee process, that they should provide a sketch showing where they're gonna plant the
Yeah.
tree.
But as far as the depth of the tree, I mean,
Right, I mean, if you're digging for concrete piers, you guys require them to inspect the hole before you can fill it with concrete. And when the city says it's okay, then you bring in the concrete. Figured it'd be the same thing for the trees, right?
Well, concrete pier is a structural issue, tree's not really structural.
Let's
As
say
long
that-
as it's in that's where I think if the sketch shows like, hey, I'm gonna put it in the right of way between here and here, and there's no other obstructions, I think that should be sufficient.
Well, I think we should at
Costly tree.
least include
Right.
planting instructions.
Yes, that could be
So
part
that
of the
they,
plan.
so that they
Yeah.
know,
Tree lives.
where, how deep.
So I was
How
How
to-
deep,
How to do the
need to
whole.
water it, because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what time of year is best to plant,
Yeah,
Yeah.
those kind of things. 'Cause
Yeah.
we don't want the tree to die when they put it in.
Right. And
What I was
because
concerned with is
yeah.
if, let's say you get a high-end tree that was permitted, put it in the easement, and it wasn't dug properly or cared for properly, are we on the hook for it as a city? It dies, it replaces,
Yeah, when it
hard
dies,
to
then,
replace it, right?
yeah,
I mean,
So if I put a real fancy tree in and you can't prove negligence,
but
the city of Harvard has to replace it.
right now, we don't have a tree for tree language.
Right.
You know, so
I'm just
if
asking.
the tree dies, it's subject to the
Whatever.
funds available and.
And
Or would somebody
whatever
say, you didn't
trees
tell
that
me
already
how
have
deep to
available.
go?
What's that?
Would that person be able to claim, you didn't tell me how deep I gotta go or how long?
Well,
I
I
have to
think
go?
each species has a planting depth requirement. Am I wrong about that?
They're all
Flare.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're, this stuff already, like, the selecting and planting trees little guide that the Arboretum has, it spells out, like, planting depth and
It's
And all
generally
this
about
stuff.
4 inches below the splice,
what's that?
about 4 to 6 inches below the splice. You don't want to cover the splice.
Yeah, you don't want to bury the
Root flare.
graft.
Yeah.
If there's a root graft, you don't want to cover the graft, but you want to
You want
plant
the
it
flare.
at the root flare at grade.
Great.
But
Yeah, and you don't want to mound up mulch
there's some
Around
basic
the- yeah,
info,
like-
how to water it.
like most of the landscapers do.
You know, they got skin in the game. Most of the time when people are
Yeah.
willing to spend their own money on this.
Yeah,
they're
they wanna do it right.
Willing to spend the $25 for the permit, spend either, plant it themselves or hire somebody to plant it. They're gonna care about its,
Yeah.
well,
Well, especially if you're buying like a 5-year-old or 7-year-old tree, you're talking more than hundreds of dollars. You're throwing down that kind of money. You want the thing to grow.
average wholesale cost for a 2.5-inch tree is probably about $300 these days. That's wholesale. That's not retail.
Yeah.
Double it for retail usually.
So if you've got, $1,200 in the game, you're gonna make sure it's watered and you're gonna.
And if you're
Yeah.
putting in a 2.5-inch tree, that's a big tree to handle, so somebody's probably planting
Yeah,
it
somebody's
for
planting
you.
it for you, because you're
Yeah.
not bringing it home in your truck. Yeah.
It's a good point, especially because we wouldn't be on the line for the replacement, but we would have to deal with this dead tree potentially. But, I don't know that that's that. A 3-inch dead tree is not.
Yeah,
And just going back a step, you don't want to put in language, replace tree for tree. Species for species. You just want to keep it based on availability of what we have in stock. So if they put in, giant redwood I don't know much about trees, and it dies and it gets replaced with a red maple, it's what we have in stock.
Any other penalty type issues? No? Okay. Is this good? Does this help, Rob?
yeah, this helps.
Okay.
And so the penalty language, tree selection, so like I said, the next thing would be a list. I'd ask this board to have some sort of list or a reference, and then I can just enforce it.
Okay, yeah, because that's the number 5 would be tree selection put on here as a discussion item. Sounds like maybe we should do that next month.
I don't think we're ready for it
Yeah.
yet.
Okay.
I will commit to bringing in Shannon will bring in references.
Okay, okay.
I'm
Woo.
thinking though that they're like, because it's not, I don't think it's just one list of trees like that. I think
Right, it's
in this scenario.
right
this
tree,
is the
right place.
expected list. In this scenario.
Right.
So what do you need?
I mean,
What categories do you think we have to identify?
I would think that, I would consider, I think there is some language about, water mains and stuff, or sanitary mains, something that's not gonna try to put tap roots into the sanitary system, or fine roots.
Don't know silver maple.
Yeah, so, consideration of like trees in the right of way
Willows.
over sanitary main or over water main, something that would have more of a shallow root depth, and then underneath, power lines and utility lines, something that doesn't grow large, and then also, considering
Obstruction.
site obstruction, so nothing, bushy, you can't put a dogwood in the corner of your lot where there's an intersection.
No arborvitae's.
Right, something like that, yeah, and I mean, I would recommend that, we don't allow tall bushy things, anywhere near the right of way. I would stick to more, more traditional tree because, yeah, single stem or, maybe river birch, things like that, where there's still a sight line, because if there's kids or pedestrians that are crossing the street, we don't want to be attributable to any sort of sight issues.
Evergreens.
Yeah, no evergreens.
Um,
How about the peonies?
Have any narrow,
Planting beds.
like restricted,
In,
want to make something for the downtown zone?
in areas, we could do something maybe for the downtown zone. And maybe we could, this is down the line, but establish, if you only have 3 feet of right of way between the sidewalk and the curb, sorry,
Non-contender.
yeah.
It's not enough room.
Yeah, not only is it a problem for the infrastructure, but then you also create a hazard if there's a vehicle that leaves the roadway.
It's got the list going.
I think, and like you said, the Arboretum has the guide for planting and where and when and where. Obviously the list is very extensive, but if the tree board selects snippets from that list and just say, hey, this is and then we can always reference then, the tree board's accepted these trees from the Morton Arboretum, and these are, widely accepted trees for these types, and it's kind of non-contested.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the nice thing is their secondary guide that goes with their tree selection is the how to plant them and
Right.
care for them.
Yeah.
And CRTI uses that stuff to try to support communities like us.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you. Any other comments on that? So number 6, schedule October event. Our Oaktober. Oh. Tree planting event. So do we have a location? I'm looking at the mayor and Lou and Rob, since I don't get to decide the location.
So the only location that springs to my mind is sort of the area adjacent to the library, because that, with us closing off the road, there's a bigger green space there and a bigger open area. Maybe there's something that could be done there. There's plenty of parking for an event if there is a lot of attendees. And then especially coming into possibly grant opportunities for Milky Way Park, I would have traditionally recommended something like that, but we don't know, we don't want to put a tree in the wrong spot.
Right.
I think right now the safest bet would be something,
Dog park.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
There definitely could use some trees in the dog
Yeah.
park.
I know there's
Could also
some,
use some trees in Mary's Park where a bunch were removed over the last several years.
so,
We did plant one there 2 years ago, I think, for Arbor Day. But I think that's the only tree that's been planted. We took out, I don't know, a dozen trees easily.
How should we I mean, is there a preference to location? I mean, those are three good spots.
I would suggest Mary's Park, just because we are trying to work on building up our parks. It is pretty barren there.
Mhm.
And as the mayor pointed out, we've removed, what, a dozen trees? or
I think
so?
about a dozen trees over the last 6 years or so that were
Yeah.
just, it was very costly because they were all dying and needed to be removed.
Yeah, and they were big, yeah.
But have not been replaced. So, I certainly could support putting more trees in that park.
And it'll help beautify the surrounding area as well.
Sure. Sounds good.
Mary's Park?
Okay, Mary's Park. Well, it's also near Washington School.
Mhm.
Yeah. And where we just redid the,
For a field trip there.
Do
Because
they?
my daughter did when she went to school there for kindergarten. We went for a field trip, so,
yeah,
yeah. It's a
okay.
nice park.
So what would be a good date? Right, we don't want to go too late in the fall.
What species of trees were you looking to plant there?
Oaks. right?
Oaks,
Oak, okay.
Oaktober.
October,
yeah.
It doesn't have to be though.
no, but,
I think it should
There
be.
should be at least one.
yeah.
No, I think oaks would be fantastic there.
Well, and oaks are, I mean, that's our city tree, you know, that, I mean, when Harvard was settled, that was what the trees were, that were here, and you still have a bunch of the old oaks around town, and they're the ones that we're losing, so that would be
Do
kind
you
of
want to
fun.
do that on the weekend, or do you want to do it during the week?
Are we going to look for some of the community groups to assist, like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
Garden Club?
garden clubs?
Yeah.
Well, do you know how many trees you'd be planting?
I could bring it up to Garden Club this coming Tuesday,
Okay,
if we get something, a plan going.
yeah.
This would be something, yeah, get the scouts involved in.
I think if we're gonna do that, a weekend would probably be more
Yeah.
realistic for those groups too.
So the first weekend in October is the 5th, is Saturday, and the next weekend is the 12th.
Which is Columbus Day weekend, right?
That is Columbus Day weekend.
So people usually,
So maybe you do it the 5th?
People
Then
usually
maybe
what?
well, people with kids, they have the Monday off school.
Oh, I see.
so
I was gonna say,
usually-
what do people
sorry,
do for
People
Columbus
usually
Day?
go away.
I know, right?
Oh, you know.
Get much further in October.
It's,
and
no,
you
it's
risk it
Indigenous
being-
People Day now, really,
Other
yes.
perspective, the fifth front end of the month gives us a better chance, a better run.
Okay,
Oh, 5th?
okay, October 5th.
How big do you want to make this though?
Huge.
Well, I'm like, do we want to actually reach out to one of the taco trucks in town so the taco truck will be there?
Wow.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
How many trees do you intend to plant?
How do we intend to get the trees, would be the next
I
question.
was thinking that we should contact, local nurseries and
And
see if they
see
would
if
be willing to donate.
Donate.
Talk to McHenry and Gertie's,
Yeah. Yeah, Harvard.
Harvard, and
Harvard and, yeah, Gertie's.
Would the garden club donate a tree?
I will bring it up. I will ask.
Debi too.
You know, from Majestic, the largest trees that they would have would be 10 gallon.
That's okay.
That's okay? Okay.
Well, I think when you're working with volunteers,
Yeah,
sometimes it's better to have that
True.
smaller plant material. I mean,
yeah.
we'll have the ability to work with 2.5-inch trees.
Okay.
We can get a ball cart or something,
Yeah,
pre-dig some holes,
Yeah.
whatever.
okay.
We can make it so that, actually, the best concept is to have a variety of species and a variety of sizes.
Okay.
But I think if we can get donations, then you take.
That's always
Yeah.
Well, you take what you can get, to a
Yeah.
degree, as long as it's
Yes, yes,
not on our prohibitive
yeah,
list.
right? So what would be, let's just think about that. So what would be ideal species to be in a,
What was lost? What trees came down?
I think there were a lot of oak in that.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think they were mostly oak.
So then I guess it would be nice to replace oak with oak, like you say,
Yeah.
this town was, people lived here because there was shade.
Yes.
yeah,
It was the
that's
edge
what,
of the prairie. This
yeah.
was the last spot where you weren't dying from. So, yeah,
Yeah.
to I think burrows would be nice if possible, but it doesn't have to be that.
and up to a dozen?
Sure.
I mean, I'm just throwing a number out there. Doesn't have to be, but, yeah, okay.
I'd say, 10 a dozen, would be a
Yeah.
good number.
I think if we're gonna do that many, we should do some diversity though, put some faster growing trees in to recover some of the canopy. Some of the hybrid elms are good, and
that's
London plane.
like my concern at the last meeting is a combination of slow and fast, so we don't grow a whole bunch of stuff that.
We're never gonna
we
see.
would never-
What about a fruit tree that's on public and people can pick fruit? Is that an issue for maintenance?
The only issue with fruit-bearing trees becomes bees and other pests where, in a public space, then we have people saying, this tree's dropping
Yeah,
apples.
That's fair statement.
Well, and they have to be pruned. I mean, they have to be correctly pruned. Yeah.
Cared for.
You can get interesting with that, though. You can go like persimmon or like non-conventional fruit trees that you can eat.
Yeah.
Filbert or.
Yeah.
Say they're not fruiting cherry trees, you had to get to it.
A cherry blossom, yeah.
Well played.
So making it just a very, like a community event.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I like that. I think that's great.
You could tie in TLC too, no?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, get volunteers out. I love the food truck idea.
I think we should get Rush Creek to sponsor it.
Oh, ooh, yeah.
I mean, they should donate a tree.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
How about
go
the,
to some of the
yeah,
community.
right. Yeah, the distillery.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should get a tree out there. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Anything else on the event? I'll talk to Majestic.
All contact areas.
What about Beeson's? Are they still operating out on White Oak, Beeson's Nursery?
I don't know. It's
I haven't talked to Mary in a long time, so
yeah, she's been out in Montana a lot. Yeah. And they have a grandchild in Portland.
Oh, Portland.
Yeah.
I was thinking Minnesota.
No, Portland. I don't know, they might have one in Minnesota too, but I know they have one in Portland. Jay, do you know any taco truck people?
Right here in town, we see all the time, they've got great tacos.
They
Okay.
do have good
How about
It's
the,
so tempting, you're like, oh, I'm on my way home to eat, and I'm like,
Yeah.
so our ice cream truck,
Oh,
our ice
yeah.
cream truck that goes around, they came by my street today. I was so excited. I heard the music.
at first I thought it was somebody playing Just Out of the Car.
I said, oh, I think
And
that's
then
the
you
ice
realize,
cream truck.
wait, it's the same song, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor's report?
I don't really have much to report tonight, but I do want to say thank you all for forming this board. It's been a long time coming. We've not had this kind of board in our community before, and taking a very good look at our tree inventory and helping us create more trees and encourage citizens to plant more trees. So thank you very much for volunteering and being a part of this, and I'm hopeful that we'll see great things come from it. So.
I had a question, Lou, just any trouble with the application, the grant? Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Did they give you an idea of when we'll hear?
No, not yet.
Okay,
I did have a question. Where are we at with posting our city signs?
So anything that's on state routes, I'm not subject to state rules. It's been forwarded to the sign department, and they're supposed to be reaching out to me. I did reach out again yesterday to the contact that I know, and he's like, I've sent it to the sign department, so.
So what I'm recommending to the board is whenever that happens and they get there, the board should go get a photo,
Yeah.
to recognize, and then we can promote it on
Yeah.
the city's website. We are now, because we are now, but it'd
Yeah,
be nice to see it actually posted
yeah,
on the road.
Yeah.
there, so.
that's a good idea.
And once we get the permission from IDOT, we've got, Lou asked for four locations, so once we know, we'll get the signs up and ready to go. I imagine IDOT's gonna put them up because it's their right of way, so.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, any new business? No?
Small thing, I will forward you the date. They already had a location for the fall urban forest basic training class, so they don't need a location.
All right.
I'll get you the info.
Please.
For the event to see if that's something that you could send me to.
Absolutely.
So I have a question under new business that I'm interested. One of the things that we're trying to do under our recreation department is create more recreational programming. But I see an opportunity for this board and our rec department to kind of pair together to create some educational programming for residents concerning trees and care of trees. So I'm hoping we can kind of maybe tap into the resources here to create, maybe a quarterly, maybe quarterly is too often, but maybe once a year we have a class where we, promote programming and come and sign up, learn all about trees and how to plant them, prune them.
Bruno, I would
Because
be very willing to.
I think, most residents, they go to pruning because they know they need a prune, but they're not pruning them correctly, right? And so having that kind of thing, as a available resource in the community, they could sign up for it. And, hey, we're going to have a quick presentation and show you how to do this and ask your questions. So I'm hopeful that if you guys are willing to help with that, we'll have Stacy reach out to set something up.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
One thing I did also want to bring up is with the OSLIC grant that we're trying to get for Milky Way Park, it includes a more extensive walk path. And I remember as a kid, and even with my kids, having to go help them find like leaves from different trees and so on. What I was kind of envisioning on that, and this was before this board met, was to line it on either side with just a variety of trees. So when they walk, they get it, and we can put little signs along, like this is a bur oak, this is a red maple. Don't know very many trees, so I apologize, but the idea is though that they can walk and literally see just 2-3 dozen different types of trees on a simple walk.
Then it can become an arboretum and we can
Exactly.
be eligible for more money.
Exactly.
Yes.
There is an idea that we've talked about along those ideas, along that line of thinking, that I wanted to bring up here real quick. Yeah. So, here we go. So, the city owns some property right here. this whole area here, and it's right along Moller Creek. So here's a wastewater treatment, this is Brink Street, here's Marengo Road. So, we have been interested in creating actually an overall biking and walking path that would connect across 173 from your neighborhood in Shadow Creek. And actually could come down here along Moller Creek and then connect to Eastman, which would give walking and biking to downtown from that part of town.
Yeah.
With that is, I don't know what species of trees are in here, but this is a very wooded, densely wooded area that we would like to have a meandering path that goes through that people could enjoy, basically make it another park that is, really dedicated to trees. It's kind of been out there. It's not been a formalized plan, but it is something that we've desired to do. Now that we have a tree board, I think we could get some critical mass to move that forward.
Is that something we could do under volunteer work?
Could very well, yeah. I've not walked this property to understand what all is there, but the city does own, I probably should have gone to Athena, but the city owns, basically from here over to here. So this whole area.
There's just a small sliver that the owner, and I've already been in conversation that he's willing to just give, and that would just, that means we
I can go to
the
Athena.
south of Moller.
Okay.
South?
Well, because it curves.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
Um,
the area he's talking about with property lines, this makes it a lot easier. So you can see, here's Moller Creek. The sliver that we don't own is this one. But we own this whole area, and so the idea was for, because the city owns all along here, we could create a walking, biking path that could cross right here over to more city property, follow this over, go through this wooded area, and then connect here to this walking bridge, and now you're downtown.
Just let him do it.
Yeah, let him drive.
That property right there, as you can see here, this is the little bit that the owner is currently willing to give to us. But I've already opened the door to potentially acquiring this at a later date, and the city still owns this park here.
Oh,
So there's a chance to actually put something on both sides, including
Yeah.
down here at some point.
Yeah, because
It's the right of way.
yeah, this is a road right here, part of the street.
So that, there's an opening down the road, where he's not in a hurry, that's the desire he wants to go, or that we both agreed on, it just, when funds become available.
And the city recently acquired this piece of property for a song.
So there's a potential to make it a very nice, arboretum. walking
usable
path.
park, yeah.
Right, on both sides. And then tie it into, as the mayor indicated, the walk path, bike path. It's also a very short distance from the downtown,
Right.
so people from downtown, if they want to just continue to walk down.
Yeah, you'd connect all three of our subdivisions on Airport Road to downtown with a safe access
Yes.
to downtown.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a runner, and how it is right now,
Yeah.
it's not.
This is, the only thing that's
It's hard
really
to
ever
get to
stopped this
downtown.
from going forward is funding, right?
Yeah.
But, it's kind of been loosely planned, to try and connect these neighborhoods to our downtown area. And ideally, we want to connect all of our parks together with some kind of walking system, which is going to still utilize some streets, but where we can, this makes really a lot of sense because we already own the right of way, so there's no lane acquisition required. It's just building the path.
What side of the creek is the path gonna be on?
Well, I think the idea was going to be, it's going to be down behind this backyard. Then across here. So,
On the East or west side of the creek? Which, I'm sorry.
So it would go into this,
East
this, yeah.
In our
east
backyard.
It would be right where all my beautiful plants are.
As you can see, there's some people encroaching on city property.
Yeah, no,
You
for
can see
sure.
that.
That's my house.
There's a nice red bud back there. There's
Yeah, someone's got a little thing here, I don't know, yeah, that's all city property they're encroaching on.
The west side is a lot more.
Yeah, the problem with that is,
You gotta
the
get
close
across the
proximity
creek
to
and
the waste pond.
Yeah.
We would want someone going in there, so, yeah. The other option is, to go through here, because the city owns here, but, the idea originally was to run the path all the way down, I think,
long term, that would be pretty cool.
down here, so.
That's
So-
still on the table.
This sliver is owned by, the person who owns this property.
Really?
No, I'm sorry, no, that's Stacy, this is Stahl. So at one point, they were interested in selling it to the city, so we would have this right away, for that very purpose, but, we'll have to wait and see. We've not moved forward with that.
Right now, actually, just to fill you in on that, they're willing to donate it. It's just, she's in the process of, getting the other siblings to sign off on it. And then the attorney to draft it, and then eventually present it to, council.
And you can see there's some encroachment happening here too, so. Yep, there's sheds and, well, we would.
They're somebody else's, they're private
you know,
property
you
now.
know, at some point, yeah, if the private property, they could just take it, right? But I think if it becomes a city, then the city would probably notify all these homeowners like, hey, you need to get your property off of this because we're gonna develop it to a pathway.
I mean, one thing that I'd point out is, in both Country Brook and Shadow Creek, where you don't have a lot of through traffic.
No,
So it's very easy, and you have sidewalks. So it's actually very easy to move through both of those subdivisions. And so getting people to the park and then joining a trail there, I mean, that would be a first priority.
So, and I know we're getting way off tree board stuff, but, so the idea originally was to acquire this, come up, you already own all that, so you can literally put a path around it. You're getting rid of this land, but, we still are, retaining a right-of-way access, so you can actually branch off back onto the roadway or continue up. So that whole western end, becomes more usable.
So what's going to happen with that
Yeah, what
open
are you
space
putting
area?
there?
this area here,
Yeah.
It's-
become lots to build new houses
Right,
on.
at least 2 lots.
Well, doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of that subdivision, which was to cluster the houses and then have open space?
No, actually, that was eventually just donated to the city, that little parcel there.
Right, but it wasn't subdivided. It was supposed to be open
It's
space.
used as a park. That's kind of
Yeah,
sad. There's a lot of kids that play in
That's open
that.
space.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the design of that subdivision, it was cluster, and then with open space around the small, with small lots, but then there was open space with it, so you didn't just cram more houses together.
There is currently a dead linden there too. A dead linden tree.
In here,
Yeah. Just-
Because those are really small lots in Shadow Creek.
Just a side comment also, although I guess if there's an easement on the west side of the Harvard Vet Clinic there.
Here.
Yeah, if you got an easement in there, then it would connect to that park nicely. But there's a gate right there.
right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a gate currently.
Well, this is all city property here, so, I imagine the good doctor's encroaching a little bit too, so.
Gates on
That would be
property.
great, because we take our
But-
dogs there, and it'll be much easier to walk them there without the gate.
Yeah, there's a fence that goes across there, I don't know. if
Does it
you
go
know
across
that
there?
fence. It does.
Yeah,
It goes
the
down to
whole
the
park,
creek.
yeah,
Right in there, there's a fence, I believe.
yeah.
I don't know what the history of it is, but.
Yeah, I see fence here.
No, to the north.
Oh, they have an outdoor kennel,
Yeah, that's,
because they board dogs.
Yeah. that's an outdoor
Yeah,
run
that's a
area, right?
run.
That fence and that gate might be cities, because we surround the pond with security wire and chain.
Yeah, that could be. Does it go to keep people out? I don't know, where is the fence on?
It doesn't actually cross the creek, but it would be really
It
difficult
goes like
to.
right to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's.
That would make sense, yeah.
I think that, we just have the pond sonar and everything, I think that in most places is maybe 4 or 5 feet. It's a lot of, so, but it's a lot of sludge and slime that I think if somebody were to pencil dive in there, they'd get stuck.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be dredged at some point soon. Okay, sorry, I got off on a tangent here, but, wanted to
Yeah.
explain that this area is, you know, what we'd like to develop for some kind of,
Just something to think about long-term. For that is, I think for some liability reasons, and then just what you want it to be, do it more as a natural area versus an arboretum. Like try to quote-unquote restore it to a natural creek wetland. It gives you a different set of requirements and maintenance versus, if it's a park. Now, actually, if you do it as a park, you might not have any trees that you can keep because they pose a liability to the people on the path.
Right. Yeah.
Which you're gonna have to do some of that anyways, you know, wherever the path goes, you're gonna have to do some safety stuff. But if you do it as a natural area versus, there's some implied risk or inherent risk if you're in a natural area.
It's
yeah,
conservation.
I like that idea. It's a natural,
Just-
you know,
yeah.
wooded area,
So
right?
that's probably a ton of box elders that are growing.
Cottonwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Silver maples.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I
Yeah.
said, I have no idea what species are in there, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep
You know,
meaning to take a walk back there.
they get a nice drink of water,
Natural
so
area.
they're, you know, they're,
Yeah, there you go, okay.
I mean, again, the path will have to have some maintenance for safety or whatever, but if you do it as a natural area, it can be kept a little bit, you don't have to
More
do as
rustic.
much maintenance.
Yeah.
I think it would lower costs a little bit. But you'd probably want to talk to an attorney in terms of how you want to frame that for public safety.
Next meeting date, so. It would be, yeah, so,
Yeah, we're on.
We're out of time.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, so, we could either skip July or, move it to a different date. So
July.
it would, our normal meeting date would be July 3rd, which is awkward because the next day is July 4th, and we're gonna have 2 of our committee members on vacation. So what's the group's pleasure, to move it to a different date in July or to just skip July and do August?
Do the 10th.
I'd be open to the 10th.
Okay. Okay, July 10th.
Well, we can,
It'll be weather permitting for me.
Okay,
Historically, 4th of July is always storm season.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's when I lost my cottonwood, yeah, last year.
That's why we like to go on vacation. We don't have to deal with the damaged trees.
It's all taken care of by the time you get back.
We go with the 10th?
10th?
Does everybody agree?
Okay,
Provide whatever updates.
okay,
in case they do have conflict.
okay. Sounds good, thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Okay, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.